Hi everybody, this is the completed planter. I made this planter with 3 pieces of lumber. First, I had an 8-foot long 2x6 that I cut in half for the bottom. And then the walls around the sides is a 2x8, and that was 10 feet long. And then the legs are 4x4s, and that was an 8-foot long 4x4. Here's all the cut pieces of wood. And the plan is I'm only used 3 pieces of wood from the hardware store. So I got a 4x4, and I cut this into 21-inch lengths. So I have 4 21-inch legs. And then for the bottom, I got a 2x6. This is an 8-foot long 2x6. And of course, it's 45 inches long. And then I had to cut a 3.5-inch by 3.5-inch hole for the 4x4. And then a 10-foot long 2x8. So anyway, the 10-foot long 2x8 came into 2 4-foot long pieces and 2 11.5-inch long pieces. So like I said, I cut a hole here for the 4x4. So this says 4x4, but a 4x4 is not 4 inches by 4 inches. It's 3.5 inches by 3.5 inches because for all lumber, they assume it's planed lumber where they take a 1/4 inch off on each side. So this is a 3.5 inch by 3.5 inch here. And that's the reason this board is total length 45 inches to where the outer board is 48 inches because 1.5 plus 1.5 is 3 inches. So these things are 1.5 inches thick. I also bought some deck mate screws. Well, I mean, it doesn't matter what brand they are, but they need to be coated screws. I got them brown. Here's all my pieces. I painted them and given the paint quite a few days to dry. According to the directions, you're supposed to wait 2 weeks for the paint to fully harden. I'm not going to quite wait that long, but I certainly don't want anything a little soft or tacky on the outside. So now I'm going to mark the depth for these legs. So I want them 1.5 inches from the top, which means I'm going to have 4.5 inches. So I got this thing set for 4.5 inches, and then I'll make a little mark. We had the mark, and I took a square to make a line. Now we're ready to start screwing things together, and the very first screws I'm going to put in is in here, because this is an inside edge that you can't get to. So if you don't do this one first, you won't ever be able to get to it. And you can see we need some way to make sure these legs are absolutely square. You just don't want to eye it up, or maybe use a large framing square, something like that. Got them up to the line. And we've got our 2.5-inch deck screws. And these particular ones have kind of a star on the head. And so that they have a special bit that goes to the star. And we'll just go ahead and put those in there and secure them. Now there they are, all finished. You can see I was about maybe 5/8 of an inch off the end, and I slightly went in at an angle, and over here I did the same thing, kind of went in at an angle. So we got these 2 on there, and now this inside edge is all secured. Well, here we are. We assemble this, we make sure everything is perfectly flat on the ends, or on the bottom, excuse me, and on the ends we slide in exactly 1.5 inches on each side. Make sure that it's exactly centered. If you're slightly off by 1.5 inches, and now we're ready to screw in the screws. We're all done. Got 4 here. Screw in till just slightly less below surface. 1 in the middle, 1 in the middle between each quarter. Anyway, these legs aren't going anywhere. Okay, well, we got the 2 halves of our planter. And the only thing left to do is to put them together, and then they're secured together with the end panel. So we'll just do that next. Okay, well, I got this thing together, and it looks like I made a bit of a mistake. And remember how I told you 11.5 inch? Well, apparently there's a 1/2 inch error. So I guess each one of these 2x6s is 5.5 and 5.5. So 5.5 plus 5.5 is 11, and not 11.5. So I'm going to have to recut these end boards here to get to work right. Now we're ready to put the ends on. I took a clamp this is like an easy way. It's a little unwieldy dealing with this thing, but when you clamp the two things together in exactly the right spot, then it should work a lot easier. He's all strong, and talk about strong, nice and stable, easily support my body weight and probably a couple more. A little walk around so you can see. I mean, this thing's really kind of overkill. I mean, the wood's much stronger than it needs to be. And it's got a lot more screws than it needs to have. Every little piece is bound together by a screw. So anyway, well, it's going to last hopefully a long, long time. Here's what it looks like when you cut pressure-treated lumber open. Now, pressure-treated lumber is rated for direct burial. You can see this green stuff in there. I'm pretty sure it's a copper-based anti-rot. It's, you know, who knows, maybe a little poisonous to plants. You certainly want to put a sealer on this. You know, it doesn't have to be paint. I used paint because my wife wanted it white. But some sort of a sealer, and then the ends definitely need to be done because you can see the stuff soaks in maybe 1/4 of an inch, maybe 1/2 an inch, but the ends are open to rotting. So you definitely have to put some sort of a sealer or something on there to make it to where they don't have any problems with the rotting. Now, I'm going to do something funny here. This is pretty much done, but I have another idea. I have a whole bunch of waterproofing. So this stuff is what you use in a shower. You put this stuff on the wall underneath the tile, and it's actually pretty cheap, and I had some left over. So anyway, I'm going to waterproof this thing just to make sure that the water doesn't leak through. And you know, maybe you could use caulking or maybe something else if you wanted to make sure the water doesn't leak through. But you know, the house paint I use, this is outside exterior paint, but it's not really rated for continual wetness. So I think some sort of a waterproofing for the paint. If you use sealer, it might be a little bit different. But this is just what I'm going to do. Well, here we are, all done. It looks beautiful. Let's take a look here. You know, this membrane, this rubberized membrane, really seems to be working really nicely. Well, I'm pretty happy with it. I think my wife's going to be happy with it. And, you know, this is the way I made it. You could make it a lot of different ways. You don't have to use pressure-treated lumber. You could use cheaper lumber. These legs were way stronger than what really was needed. You could have gotten by with like 2x4s for the legs if you really wanted to. Although I'm pretty happy with the stability of the 4x4s. And, you know, even the lumber it's made out of. I've used... you know, 2x8s to make it, but you could have had something thinner, and you know, it still lasts maybe 10 years. This thing will, I'm sure, will last a lot longer. So anyway, if you have any questions, put them in the comments.